Namaste and greetings. I, Priyanka Negi, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the fifth day of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online national winter school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship. This training program is organized by IMPRI, Gender Impact Studies Center, and would be chaired by Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI. This program has an excellent panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise for the duration of this program. We are honored to have a distinguished panel of experts joining us for day 5, which includes Ms. Medhavinee Namjoshi ji, Gender and Development Professional Mumbai, Lead Gender Initiatives, Ambuja Cements, and Ms. Sangeeta Rege, Coordinator, Center for Inquiry into Health and Allied Themes, CE Heart, Mumbai. Following this, we will delve into a discussion on topic selection led by the IMPRI team. The panel of conveners comprises of Dr. Arjun Kumar ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Professor Gumadi Sridevi ji, and Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji. Proceeding further, I welcome all the participants to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for being interested and putting your time, energy, and efforts into fostering the development of young women leaders in public policy while helping us to bring together the practitioners and participants through this course for impactful policy research and action. We have also shared course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to remind the housekeeping announcements. Please join the meeting on time. There will be Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Now, without any further ado, let us start our program. I would like to invite our distinguished chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, for the opening remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Priyanka, for this introductory note. And I would like to first of all welcome Ms. Medhavinee Namjoshi from Ambuja Cements and Ms. Sangeeta Rege, Director. She is the Director of Center for Inquiry into Health and Allied Themes, and esteemed participants. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Dr. Shalu Nigam, Ms. Priyanka, and whole IMPRI team for putting this course together. A very brief summary for because we are meeting after 7 days. So I think what all has transpired today, and I think even for our resource persons, it will be useful to pitch their lecture. First of all, we had a very important overview of the women's rights movement by Comrade Amarjit Kaur, who is the General Secretary of All India Trade Union Congress, and she is also very active in National Federation of Indian Women, and she flagged off all important concerns in the women's movement, and ending with need for unity and need for fighting against identity politics and strengthening solidarity of women. In day 2, we had two resource persons. My presentation was on women in India, exploring economic, social, and political dimensions. I just went through the development trajectory of our country from the gender lens. And Ms. Urvashi Prasad, who works in Niti Aayog, she discussed some of the dilemmas and some of the experiences that how young women are becoming catalysts for change and pioneering a new era in public policy. She shared her experiences both with the non-government organizations and now with the Niti Aayog, working with the government. And she also, there were so many, she was inundated with the questions about how young women can enter such apex bodies of decision making. On day 3, we began with my overview of empowerment and development initiatives for women in India, both by the state stakeholders, state and non-state actors. So all the policies in the 5-year plan, the vision statement that came in the mid-30s about women's role in economic development, right from there till the Independence Day. And in the post-independence period, how the 5-year plan, they also included women's question, and especially after 6th 5-year plan, there was integration of women's concern, and the question, and also several schemes and programs and interventions and legal reforms, the whole history that was captured, and what the NGOs or the non-government sectors were doing in terms of formation of microfinance institution, self-help groups movement, big organizations of the working poor women and the self-employed women, role of some of the important documents, vision statements given in the Shram Shakti report, National Perspective Plan for Women, and National Commission for Women and Beijing Plus action agenda were also discussed. We also had a global perspective of 4 phases of women's feminism by Professor Roxana Marinescu from Romania, and she covered the global insights in terms of the first wave, which focused on women's rights, the second wave, which saw women's rights within gender binary, third wave, which was more inclusive and accepted the intersectional perspective, and the fourth wave, which is informed by online activism and age-related domination, subordination relationship, disability, the question of race and identity politics, and decolonial feminism, and the need for transnational solidarity was emphasized by Professor Roxana Marinescu. And then 4th day, we had Dr. Simi Mehta, because this course also involves your proficiency in writing, critical reflection, and coming up with a serious document. So the process of research paper writing from idea to article and the ethical guidelines were very comprehensively presented by Dr. Simi Mehta. And there were many questions also because from the participants, because they come from the varied background of all of them are not from academia or the social science background. There are engineers and lawyers and journalists and other social activists in the NGOs and women's organizations are also participants here. The second presentation was by a bureaucrat in action. She is a Dr. Purnima Chauhan. She made a very, very comprehensive presentation, starting from her own experience as IAS officer, who worked both at the national and subnational level, and some of the best practices which she introduced as a secretary, principal secretary of the state in terms of providing gender disaggregated data, or intervention by going into the field, grounded research that informed the action agenda, how she put the system in place to curb the sex ratio, which was the declining sex ratio and the sex selective abortions which are taking place in the border of Himachal and Haryana. And she also talked about some of the best practices globally and the study tours which she had of Sweden and the Gothenburg and the whole the community's role in environmental management and waste recycling. She discussed that. And now we have today Dr. Ms. Medhavinee Namjoshi and Sangeeta Rege, who will enlighten us about another very important dimension. One is of leading with purpose and making a difference, why we need to have a vision, mission, goals, and objectives in place so that our energy gets channelized in a right direction. And Sangeeta Rege's presentation will be on the, first of all, the women's health rights, overall health, as well as the mental health and reproductive health. Thank you. Over to Priyanka.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for beautifully summarizing the key takeaways from the previous sessions and smoothly guiding us into today's agenda. With that in mind, it is my honor and privilege to invite Ms. Medhavinee Namjoshi ji to deliver a keynote address on the empowering theme of young women leading with purpose in making a difference. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vibhuti ji, and thank you, Priyanka ji, for giving the background and overview, as well as such a warm welcome. And I would request all the participants to be participative and share your experiences and questions throughout the session. If you feel while I'm talking, you have some doubts, or I hope there is a provision for that, Priyanka, they can
Yes, ma'am.
right? So
If
please.
the participants kindly type in the chat box or Q&A, we'll take
Sure.
them at the end of your session.
All right. Perfect. So just to make a couple of things clear, I am not presenting as an academician, so I will not be speaking a lot about theories or laws or policies and strategies, but more of my insights of working with young people, especially young women over the years, and some of the understandings that I have built over the years that, help young women to deal with all the issues that they face in life and maybe progress in life on the path that they want to embark on. So having said that, I would share my screen and take it from there. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So when we say the word young person or a youth, if we all close our eyes, let's imagine what image comes to our mind when we hear the word young person or a youth. You can type it in the chat box if chat box is open to you, or we can just move ahead if that's not the option. Can we have people typing in the chat box?
Yes. Chat box is open.
When you hear the word youth or a young person, what is the image that comes to your mind? Anyone? Male image, potential, yeah. Energetic, enthusiastic, green shoot, enthusiasm. Thank you so much for your replies. Very well said. Normally, the minute you say a young person or a youth, the image that comes to our mind is a youth who is able-bodied, who is normally urban looking, and who is of a certain age. But the first image that comes to mind is not that of a woman who may not be very feminine or who may not be of a certain age. Yeah. So overall, when we think of policies that get made, overall, when we think of the notions that people have of a youth, is a very, very masculine, is a very, very male centric, is a very, very gender biased kind of image that we have. And a lot of times when we look at the policies, when we look at certain provisions that get made, certain sanctions that get made, are then impacted by these notions that we have in our mind. So a lot of times when we say youth, youth has a lot of energy, youth has a lot of potential, they have a lot of scope. A lot of times we are talking about the male youth and the way we look at male youth in our general scenarios, and not so much about the realities of a woman youth or a young woman. Having said that, let's look at who do we call young. I want to start from there. Unfortunately, there is no specific definition as to whom we would call a youth. Okay. In general, according to the UN Nations definition, it generally considers young people as somebody who is in the age group of 15 to 24 years. Whereas our Indian National Youth Policy defines youth as somebody who is in the age group of 15 to 29. In certain policies, when it comes to health, we look at adolescents as 10 to 18. When it comes to talking about young people and employment, a lot of times we talk about people who are in the age group of 18 to 35. So when we mean young people, we are talking about 2-3 different age groups. And all these age groups are very, very different in terms of their developmental stages and their needs and their aspirations. So somewhere, and these things matter a lot when we talk about youth in terms of female or women, young people. Because at different life stages, the realities of this particular group, who we call as young women, changes drastically. Again, let us look at youth and ask ourselves, is youth experience as a monolithic experience, as in the same, similar, exact same experience across, or does it differ? So if we look at legal definition, more or less, youth is defined as monolithic. Everybody is considered as youth, belonging to this particular age group. But when we look at socially, we see that youth is experienced very, very differently by different sections of society. And that is due to patriarchy. I will not get into depth of patriarchy, but different notions that we have impact our social notions and experiences of youth. Which gender are you born into? Which sexuality you are born into? Do you identify yourself as a heterosexual or a binary person or a non-binary person? All these things also change your experience as a young person. The class, caste, region, ethnicity you're born into, region, language, religion, minority status, majority status, migratory status, your ableism, mental, physical, your sexuality, all these things impact your experiences of youth. Just to give you an example, if I'm an urban female born into a city of Mumbai to an educated household who has economic capacities and who has generations of wisdom in which women have been educated for 2 or 3 generations, then maybe my experience of youth is going to be very, very different than if I am a tribal girl in some remote village of Meghalaya or Nagaland or even Gujarat or Maharashtra, where I do not have basic facilities. Maybe I'm not even a first generational learner. Then my realities are going to be very, very different than the other me who was born and brought up in urban India. So we have to understand that when we talk about young people, their potentials and their dreams and aspirations, we have to understand that it's not monolithic. It's not the same. A lot is impacted by all these factors and many more. Yeah. So let us have that understanding in our mind before we look at some of the data which talks about youth at a glance, and again understand that this comes as an average, and of course it will be screwed towards people who have privilege, people who have the advantages of being in a certain particular class of people who have privilege. So if you look at this, some data is really, really interesting. If you look at percentage of women in the age group of 18 to 29 who were first married by the age of 18, you will see 24%, a little more than 24% are already married exact at the age of 18. Yeah. If you look at men, that percentage is 15.2. Then if you look at fertility rate, if you look at live births, these numbers are really, really shocking. If we look at percentage of women in the age group of 15 to 24 who have ever menstruated using hygienic methods of protection, can you look at that data? I mean, 15 to 19 and 24 to 24, we have more than 30% of people who do not have access to those kind of resources. When we look at the gross enrollment ratios here, I'm not going to talk about all this data. I will share this document with you as a reading material later. If we look at the gross enrollment ratio also, you will see a drastic change in the higher secondary and the higher education for 18 to 23. You will see it dropping considerably from 54 and 53% to 26 to 27%. Again, we can say that the girls' enrollment seems to be higher here, but having said that, what happens even after that is a question. Whenever I look at these numbers and having worked with people directly, I always feel that when we talk about girls' issues, a lot goes back to statistics, and we talk about numbers. Numbers are extremely important. It gives us a very, very clear picture of a lot of things. But having said that, I feel somewhere we have to understand that each of this number, each of the person of that 30% is a lived reality, lived experience of some person. So we have to look at these numbers as living, breathing individuals and lives who are impacted by the realities around. Whatever is happening politically, whatever is happening economically, whatever is happening at strategy level is impacting their personal lives. And that personal is unfortunately not feeding into the political the way it should. Because again, we put them together as a number. And yesterday, very beautifully, some of the people shared in the budget session arranged by the same organization that we are not looking at the differences which are brought about because of the intersectionality and what it means to people who are really truly in margins, and especially women, because in margins also women get pushed further down the margins. These two things which I have brought in here are from my experiences of working with Vacha, a women and girls organization in Mumbai, which primarily works with adolescents and young people with empowerment of women and sensitization of young boys. When we were working with girls in that organization, and we were sitting and discussing ki kya lagta hai, where is it that we get pulled behind, and girls have shared this themselves. This has come from girls' own lived experiences. They say that when we are 0 to 6, we are not allowed to be born. Our birth certificates, which is a basic document, is not made. There is differentiation in nutrition that we get. School admission, there is a discrimination. Boys are sent to the English medium or a better school, and girls are sent to the government schools or the regional language schools. As they become 6 to 9 years, there is workload which increases at home. They're asked to be a little away from boys, and that means be away from the things that the boys do. They're constantly told that you're weak, you're delicate, you're not supposed to do some heavy duty work. From 9 to 12 years, they're continuously told about the menstruation, what is jayaz, what is najayaz, what is allowed to them, what is not allowed to them. They're told that you have to start thinking about how getting married, and so you shouldn't climb on the trees, you shouldn't do a lot of kind of sports where you will get injured, because then nobody will marry you at the age of 9 to 12. Imagine. There is again restriction on clothes. Suddenly in this age, you're not supposed to wear a certain kind of clothes. From 12 to 15, girls told us that there is a constant fear of child marriage. There is a constant threat and supervision and taunts when it comes to being beautiful. I still remember, and it echoes in my mind every time somebody says something about beauty. One of the girls had shared, दीदी आपको पता है सुंदर होना भी अपने आप में मुसीबत है, सुंदर ना होना भी मुसीबत है. सुंदर हो इसलिए घर में बांधे रखते हो, सुंदर हो नहीं हो तो भी लोग आपको देखेंगे, अच्छे रिश्ते नहीं आएंगे, काली ज्यादा हो जाएगी, बाहर नहीं भेजते हैं. So this whole notion of beauty and how the girl should look impacts a lot of decisions girls make in this age group of 12 to 15. A lot of girls drop out of education at this age and also are victims of sexual harassment in public places as well as in their own private domains of home in this age. 15 to 18 becomes extremely crucial when there is a lot of pressure of getting married or preparing yourself for being a marriage material. There is constant threat of not damaging or not tarnishing your image and not putting a dhappa on your family's name and pride. There is constant supervision on your mobility and venturing out of home, and constant threat of all these restrictions. Girls also said that what is violence? Violence is not only physical, violence is not only sexual, just the threat, constant threat of violence. ऐसा करेगी ना मार पड़ेगा, वैसा करेगी ना घर में बंद करके रखूंगा. So this constant threat of violence or perception of violence that is waiting for them if they don't fall into line is itself violence. And if you try to break that image of what is expected of you to be a good girl, a good woman, then there is always violence waiting for you. And that creates vulnerabilities in women, which is very, very difficult to come out of later unless and until there are very directed and very, very structured interventions made. These are some of the poems girls in Vacha had written about how they face barriers in this age. There is a constant culture of silence that the girls are supposed to maintain so that they can be called good girls. Girls don't question. Girls don't laugh out loud. Girls don't do this. Girls don't do that. So what's the issue actually? Let us understand that young age, young youth, the girls and women have a lot of aspirations. They have a lot of ambitions. They have a lot of capacities and capabilities. It's actually proven. When I was working with UNICEF, there was a lot of discussion happening, just as the first 1,000 days are very, very important because there is a drastic growth in a person mentally, physically. At the same time, the second window of growth opens up when a person is hitting puberty, right? Suddenly there is a growth spurt. The height increases. You start thinking abstract. You start forming your own opinions. You start dreaming for yourself. And this is the time when the women and girls are pushed into the private domains of their homes. So just when you want to fly high, just when you want to, open your wings and try new things, they're on constantly pulled back. So there is constant struggle between their own ambitions, aspirations, growing capacities, capabilities, with which they want their voice to be heard, with which they want to gain agency, with which they want a seat at a table, whether it's family discussions, whether it's political discussions, whether it's social discussions. They want opportunities of growth. But instead, they are denied access and availability of resources for the same. There are social notions and sanctions which keep pulling them back. The sense of legitimacy in certain spaces is missing for women and girls. Agency is not accepted for women at a lot of tables and a lot of places. The supportive ecology for women for growth is also missing in a lot of places. Additionally to this, women also face barriers which are self-taught. We have to understand that women and girls are also growing in the same patriarchal notions in which the system are putting pressure on them. What it means is women and girls traditionally do not have the general wisdom of what it takes to succeed in public life just the way men have. I'm not saying women don't have generational wisdom. They have tons of generational wisdom, which is not accepted as wisdom by people. Yeah. Women traditionally have been the pioneers of preserving seeds. Women have been pioneers of taking care of ecology. Women have been pioneers in science, actually. But that wisdom is not acknowledged by society. And a lot of times, when we talk about in today's era, what it takes to be a professionally successful person, many a times there are no models, there are no wisdoms as to how you manage being a professional in a economic world outside. Women somehow also learn to self-silence, especially young women who do not come from privileged backgrounds. Yeah, they learn a culture of silence because they don't believe what they are saying is going to be good enough. At times, what if somebody says that, isko to kuch pata nahi, fir bhi itna sab bolne aa gayi. What if I'm wrong? What if people laugh at me? What if I make fool of myself? Is it my place to even speak here? These are the doubts because of the kind of cultural inhibitions that are imbibed in women and girls. We start silencing ourselves. Or even if we have to speak, we would say, sorry, but can I speak? I don't know if I'm correct, but I want to say this. This is how even on professional platforms I've heard young women start, whereas what they have to say is a very legit, a very, very intelligent concept to share. A lot of times women are held back by emotional stereotypes or gender biases and the stereotypes which they also inherit or they also imbibe in themselves. I want to drive a bike, but in my location, not many, I have not seen a woman do that. So can I really do it? Is it meant for me? These are the kind of self-doubts which also held back women. especially when you reach a leadership position or in a group. At times, the accepted ways of behavior are masculine ways of behavior. And if you want to have your own way of being a feminine person who wants to take a charge, again, you doubt yourself. You're supposed to be a stern, strict person. Can I be a very loving, caring boss? Will I be taken seriously? So these are the kind of notions I have seen even senior women in leadership struggling, and this multiplies for younger women. Especially young women struggle extremely heavily on work-life balance challenges. We saw the data in the earlier slide. Mostly in India, a huge proportion of women are still getting married in their 20s. Yeah. They're having their first kid in early 20s. And this is a time when you are also trying to make something of your life outside of home domain, if at all you can. Whether it is a white collar job, whether it's a blue collar job, whether it is a manual job, whether it is a daily wage job, or whether it is a dehadi kaam, whether it is a landless labor woman who is trying to make a living, she is struggling with double burden. She is struggling with multiple expectations that being outside of home and being in a work and managing a house is putting on her. Because young women feel that through a lot of struggle they have reached somewhere, there is also a notion of perfectionism. If I'm doing something, I have to do it perfect, so that nobody says कि देखो लड़की है ना इसलिए ऐसे कर दिया, woman है ना इसलिए इसको नहीं जमा. So to ensure that nobody says things like that, women become extra hard on themselves, expect too much out of self. They always face glass barriers and glass ceilings. There is lack of mentorship, sponsorship, and role models at times for young women when they want to venture out, as I earlier said. In addition to that, there are 3 M's which really held young women back, which is mobility, marriage, and motherhood. These 3 M's are so critical in women's life that it can change a woman's life 360 degrees. I have seen through my work young women struggling with mobility issues, and mobility is very tightly connected with the safety and security of young women. It is very tightly linked with the notions of family's pride and women not falling into the line and using maybe their agency and choosing their own life partners. So not to ensure that doesn't happen, mobility is curtailed. Then if my village does not have a school after 5th, my chances of enrolling myself in 6th become very difficult. If there is no college in my vicinity, my chances of going into college become very difficult. If there are restrictions when it comes to where I can go for securing skilling, which is the happening hot cake currently in our country. If you can't get education through universities, get skilled, but where are these skilling institutes? Are there in my village? Can I really access them? And if I get a job through these skilling institutes, if I get a job through my education, am I allowed to move to another city on my own to work? How many girls and women, young women especially who are not married, are given a chance to move? Currently, I work, as Vibhuti Ben and Priyanka also said in the beginning, I work with Ambuja Cement Foundation, and we have around 36 skill building institutes across India. And we're constantly trying to work around this issue because we struggle very hard and ensure that young women are enrolling in skilling institutes and getting trained in courses which are not very gendered women courses like stitching, parlor, or even BPOs or computer operators, but goes beyond and become, maybe mobile repairers, or maybe become automobile assistants, or even become the CNC workers, and those kind of jobs are concentrated in industrial areas. So it becomes very, very difficult to convince parents to send these women. We also have had women who were trained in our security guards courses, but then when it comes to moving to some other city for better prospects, it becomes extremely difficult to convince the parents. And unless and until there are special provisions made, I'll talk about it when we come to solutions. But these kind of mobility issues are extremely difficult for women. But when it comes to mobility with marriage, nobody asks you whether you really want to go for it. We talk about child marriages, but we don't talk about forced marriages. So a lot of young women who may not be getting married as young as child brides, but who are getting married because there is so much of pressure by family to get married at a certain age in a certain kind of family. And then that mobility of the girls is never questioned. That migration of the girls is never questioned. And that puts young women in a lot of vulnerable positions at times. Imagine being a 21-year-old girl, a 22-year-old girl, who is born and brought up, say, in a small village in Satara or even Nagaur, and suddenly has to move, who has only worked in the fields and suddenly has to move to Ahmedabad, Surat, or even Bombay or Delhi in that matter, and suddenly exposed to a huge city in a neighborhood where everybody knows her in-laws, but nobody knows her, and something happens to her, or she wants to go against the wills of the in-laws. How much threat she must be feeling, because she doesn't have friends there. She doesn't have relatives there. At times, she doesn't even have access to mobile phone there. So we have to look at mobility in all these aspects, marriage in all these aspects, as to whether it is empowering the young women or whether it is really holding young women back. Even today, how many families are asking young girls, do you want to get married ever, or you want to pursue your career and make something of yourself? Marriage is seen as a natural conclusion of all the inputs your parents are giving you to get married. Achhe ghar mein shaadi honi chahiye. Why in a lot of households in rural India and in urban India, is also in certain communities who are again privileged, who can access education, I have seen that girls are sent into certain courses because today in job market everybody wants padhi likhi ladkiyan. So the sanctions for education also come through the notion that tomorrow they should get married to a good boy. Then when motherhood comes, motherhood is so subjugating, and for young women it is so glorified that you have to become a mother, you have to take care of a son. So yesterday only I was seeing a meme, and in which two women were saying, you know what, my husband has taken a back seat and he takes care of the child when I come to work. You know what, he also does dishes, and everybody's applauding. And the same conversation happens between two men. You know what, my wife has taken a sabbatical and she's taking care of the child, and you know what, she also does the dishes, and everybody applauds, which we generally never see. It is seen as a taken thing. Care work is a heavy, heavy, heavy burden on women, and especially young women who are not, it's for them, it's a first time experience, and there is a lot expected, and the goodness of them being a woman and a wife and a mother is tasted at this stage of their life. As a result, we see that unfortunately, when we look at these figures, of course, these are a little dated, 2020, but if we can see at entry level, we only see 24% women. In senior management level, 19%. Extremely senior management, 2.2%. And when we see women at board, hardly 7%. And we are only talking about formal sector, working women. We're not talking about almost 78% of women who are doing heavy duty agricultural work, and which is not even considered as work. They're not even considered as farmers, because I also currently work very, very closely with women farmers and people in rural area. And at times it becomes very difficult to convince women themselves that, you know what, you are a farmer, aap kisan ho, aap kheti ke almost 80% काम करते हो. So that whole understanding of women and work, and young women are looking at elder women with these notions and growing up. So interestingly, even in a city of Mumbai, if I conduct a session with college students who are graduating from esteemed organizations, and you ask them how many of you have working women, mothers, only 1 or 2% will raise their hands, and the others will say she's a housewife. And you have to talk about the politics of words. You have to talk about how a woman cannot be a wife of the entire house. She can be at least homemaker. There's so much work she's doing at home, and that has to be appreciated, though not economically, at least value wise it has to be appreciated. So young women are facing all these challenges socially and in their house before they move ahead. At times we do not have a lot of role models for young women. I don't know how much time I have. I have 15 minutes more. Yeah, so I will just quickly run through a few examples which I value a lot when I work with young people. Always keep them in my mind as pioneers who we should look forward to. We all, of course, have Malala, who is world famous for her stand on girls and education. We have Mukta Salve, who way back in 18th century has done so much pioneering work when she questioned the intersectionality and the caste bias against people, especially girls. I'll be sharing the slides so you would get the details. I will not be reading all through. Another very, very important person to remember is Rukmabai, who has also been a pioneer in so many ways. She is the one because of whom today we had, in 18th century, we had the Consent Act where the marriage age and women's consent was considered. We had Sarla Takral, who chose aviation. Who would have thought in that era? But she was a pioneer. We had Amrita Shergill, who we all know her for her work as a painter. Of course, we know Greta. So there have been all these women who have broken these barriers, who have, dealt with all these issues and moved forward. Of course, we have Anandi Bai in Maharashtra. We cannot forget her. We have Savitri Bai. I have not included all the names here, but we have Fatima Bi. There were so many young women who have broken the chains of notions and traditions have gone ahead. So what is it that makes a difference? Sitting here as maybe policymakers, activists, academicians, or people with a passion to do something for young people, what are the things that maybe we need to be aware of, or we may need to focus on while working with young people or for young people? I think first and foremost, we have to ensure the access and availability of knowledge to young people, especially young people in margins, because a lot of times information, knowledge doesn't reach them at all. So how do we ensure that happens? How do we ensure the 21st century skills reach young women? How to negotiate, how to question, how to have the digital knowledge and digital power and the freedom and democracy it brings to you to acknowledge and access knowledge. And once you have knowledge and skills, of course, knowledge also includes education, formal, non-formal, both. When you have this, how do we create opportunities for them to practice and to project? This is something that we have to focus on. How do we create platforms? You would see a lot of leadership skills are learned on the sports ground. When young children are playing, they learn so much. They learn group work, learn decision making, they learn critical thinking, they learn strategy building for winning. They learn how to take a defeat in stride, but young women are not allowed in sports. So how do you bring young women in sports so that they learn all this? How do you bring in young women into the youth groups? Maybe it's a Ganpati Mandal, Durga Mandal, it could be any of political nature. How do you bring young women on these platforms? How do you bring young women into the Gram Sabhas? How do you bring young women into the university meetings? How do you bring them on the public platforms where they can practice the skills that they have learned, where they can show that they have the knowledge and technical knowledge and skills that are needed? We as young people, what can we do? Or as people who have some kind of authority, what we can do is at times in our own position, ensure that we are able to promote inclusivity. By then, I mean inclusivity of all the kind of genders, especially young voices, because they have a lot to say. And unfortunately, as elder people, we don't listen. I'm calling myself elder because I'm on the other end of 40. So I'm in front of Vibhuti when I shouldn't be calling myself elder. But when I look at the definition of youth, I'm somewhere in the middle. So definitely, I think we need to hear more. We need to listen to their ideas. We need to listen to their agonies. We need to listen to what they have to bring on the table. We need to start challenging stereotypes in our own positions and positions of power. We have to give sponsorship to young people whenever, in whichever capacity we can. We need to ensure that we are able to promote professional development of young women, young people, especially those from minorities, especially those from different abilities, especially those who are not from the binaries or do not fall into the heterosexual normative concepts of what is normal in today's unfortunate world of professional people. So being in a position of power, being in a position of privilege, at least we have to ensure we are promoting inclusivity. We at our level are challenging stereotypes and promoting professional development, providing sponsorship to them, creating networks of opportunity, because at times people from margins do not have these networks. Like I might have a father who is working in a position and his friends are working in a position where they can give me easy entry into a new job. But people in margin, especially young women, do not have that privilege. So how do we ensure that we, as people who have the authority or privilege, are connected to these networks of marginalized people till whom we can bring the opportunities? We also have to ensure how we prepare these people, maybe first generation people who are entering into the professional worlds, to be in professional worlds. At times we have to work on their confidence. We have to work with them for their communication skills. We have to work from their legitimacy in these places, and we have to prepare the places of work for these first generational entry point people, that you have to be sensitive that their lived experiences and maybe their realities are not the same as you. So what they might be getting in their tiffins may not be same as you. These are the things which are not directly related to your work, but the kind of work culture that we create for these people, that matters, and that will ensure whether they go back to excel in their careers, or they take a back seat or just withdraw from workplaces, especially the young women. We have to give them constant positive, constructive feedback and recognition if they perform better. And we have to also ensure that we create places of mentorship for young people. I'm very proud to say that in ACF, we have a forum called Punk, in which young women from rural areas who are mostly first generational workers have this forum where they come and talk about the issues they face about work-life balance, the issues they face about family not understanding that as a professional while teaching in maybe skill-based institute, why she needs to wear a uniform. And then as a person in position of power, we took a decision that if she's not allowed to wear the uniform from home and come here, then as an employee, as an employer, are we creating spaces at the work for these employees to come and maybe change their clothes, or maybe have a rest room where they can actually sleep for 2 hours if the work life balance is too challenging, if they have a young child and are not able to take a rest at home. Bring in changes in areas where you have authority on, you have control on. It is easy to preach, to tell her, why not you negotiate, at home? It's fine if you want to do that, but not everybody has the same bracket to break. Everybody lives through different kind of struggles through which they have to fight to be vocal on certain things at home. So we have to respect their lived realities and accordingly help them negotiate through those. Having said that, beyond working in your personal capacity, there are certain things that we need to do together at a macro level. And those are ensuring that there is convergence of services, systems at state, district, and block level. What I mean by this is there are a lot of policies, there are a lot of schemes by government, but at times the convergence is required. Like there would be a scheme which has certain sanctions, certain provisions for people who are below poverty line. Okay, but then there are certain schemes for women, especially in rural areas. If the husband has committed is a farmer and has committed suicide, there are schemes for women. But is there any linkage? Can we ensure a convergence where houses who are the most marginalized, where the young women, adolescent girls have the largest threat of not able to reach to the medical services, not able to continue in education, maybe falling into the traps of sex trade, falling into the trap of being, stuck into the being labor in someone's house. Domestic labor is also a huge trafficking ring in which young people, especially women, get trapped because they want to earn at times enough money for their own marriages. So can we really reach to this last segment in a convergent model? Because at times maybe education department, health department, the planning department, all these departments need to come together to build a convergent model which will actually benefit these people in the margins. And then not just build those, but make them work, make them strengthen, make them sustainable, and very, very efficient structures at every level. Just working with young women is not going to make any difference at any level, right? So we have to at the same time work on changing communities and parents and siblings mindsets, work on their knowledge, work on their aspirations, behaviors, and influencing social norms. And in our recent work and in the work in past, I've seen at times, if you are able to work with young men in the house, it has a lot of impact on the young women in the house. Yeah. So in our studies, or when I was working with Vacha, or when I was working in other organizations, when you work with young people and make them sensitive, to the needs of young women and make them take a stand for young women, at times because of the privilege of say that they have in family, a lot of women could actually achieve their dreams. If the brother says it's okay, I know, I will keep an eye, but let her go to college and get education, the parents might listen to him, unfortunately, in today's scenario. And then how do you leverage on that privilege that the young men and boys have? That is something which also, how do you make, not exploit it, but how do you make them allies in ensuring that young women are able to access certain things? How do you prepare young men to be life partners? कमला बसिन, कमला दी का एक बहुत बढ़िया सेंटेंस है कि पतियों को बाहर भेजो और साथियों को घर में लाओ. So how do you make them real life partners who are able to understand that sharing the workload is okay, it's normal. A woman doesn't have to pay the price of working out and working in home. How do you do that? How do you change these social norms? How do you make a young person say, if he's a man, that I will not be marrying a girl if she's not, at least 20 years old? How do we do that? So we have to work around this. How do you ensure that the parents listen, not just, I heard you, but listen to what the young women have to say and stand for them? We need to, of course, as I said, empower young girls to say that you have your voice, you have your agency, you have, it's legit to speak about it. Just give me a second. बाहेर गेले 5 मिनिटं जरा. Just give me a minute. There is somebody at the door. I'm sorry. Yeah, so more or less, this is what I had to say. Over to you. And if there are any questions, I'm ready for those.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your valuable insights with us. It was a lovely presentation. It laid out the ground realities very well and gave us a good sense of practically approaching empowering women in the future as well. I would now like to invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, to kindly share her remarks with us on this session.
Thank you, Medhavinee ji, for such a lucid and humane style of presentation, and also bringing it both head and heart, because you brought up very important concerns of challenging gender stereotypes in right from personal and family level to the community and professional life. What what you said, I can sum up your lecture in one way, that is reparenting, what psychologists call reparenting, the kind of gender-based stereotypes and the power relations we have, against that, to bring new kind of relationship on the foundation of mutual respect and gender equality. I think that is very important effort. And sharing and caring, you brought in the issue of unpaid care work also, and I think there also we need to play a very important role in giving the message that sharing and caring is everybody's responsibility. It is not only women's responsibility. And when you talked about convergence, I think I saw with my own eyes the experience in Tamil Nadu in the midday meal scheme, because they had 3 ministries. They had negotiations with each other. So the midday meal scheme for children, midday meal for through ICDS for the pregnant and lactating mothers, and the meals which the state was giving to the lonely elderly. So all these three schemes, they got converged, and as a result of which they got more functionaries, they got more funds also, because all these different funding that they had, that also could converge, and they also many more functions this scheme could do. It was not only eating, just serving meal, but it was also community life, where people started, the young mothers and children and elderly people who were totally abandoned by their own children. They found new life in the playing with the children, talking to children. They were telling stories to the children, while these young mothers, lactating and pregnant mothers, they got very good, useful advice from the elderly women. So it was not only just eating together, but it was also community life which it generated. So I think this is very important, that whichever scheme we do, it should not be just a tokenism, but there has to be life in it, and there should be meaningful. The resources we have, they should be used in a more humane way. So I think it's a very important message that you have given. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would now like to say that the floor is open to questions for the participants. So if anybody has any question to ask, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can type in the chat box, and you can use the Q&A box as well. Ma'am, we'll just give it like a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Okay.
Wow.
Participants can also share their experiences. That is also, wherever you are, and if you have encountered similar kind of challenges, or there some very empowering experiences, inspiring experiences, that can also be shared.
Yes, ma'am. We have Shwetma Rajji has raised their hand. Shwetma ji, you can unmute and ask.
Her question is there. Yeah.
Yes. Shwetma ji, you are allowed to unmute. You can unmute and ask your question.
It's a Pallavi Berry, no? She has asked, no?
Ma'am, a hand has been raised by Shwetma ji. You can take turn, Shwetma ji, and then we'll go
There
with
is one.
Pallavi ji. Yes.
Very okay.
Shwetma ji, are you there or?
Or maybe then I can take Pallaviji's question first and then we can
Yes,
come.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Sure, sure.
So Pallaviji is asking if I think SHGs play an important role in empowering young women, and are they in any way contributing towards addressing stereotypes towards young women? Very, very interesting question. I don't think we can generalize and say that yes, SHG play a role in empowering young women. SHGs does a couple of beautiful things. Yeah, SHGs does allow women to collectivize, which otherwise in a formal setting becomes very difficult for young women. And a lot depends on the design in which the SHGs are being built. Okay, when I say that, I mean, SHGs are formed by different authorities, different groups, different NGOs with different kind of understandings. So I have seen in certain kind of SHGs in which, even 3 members of the same family are a member. And then in those kind of SHGs, if the mother-in-law, Devrani and Jethani are there, then the Devrani wouldn't have the kind of agency in that particular SHG meeting the way if she was there without the Jethani and Sas, So if I'm working in a sector where I am trying to form SHGs, especially in Ambuja, where I'm working now, we ensure that, 2 family members of the same family will not be part of the same SHG group. So if in the same village, if there are 10 or 20 groups, then at least they are, spread across those groups so that they can be there in their own capacity as an individual rather than unfortunately in a village somehow people are linked in the relation of their in-laws. Most of the women are somehow wo to hamare dur ke tauji hai, chacha ji, all that happens. But even then, how do you try to mitigate that is something. If we ensure that, then a lot of times for young women it creates a platform where they can relate with other women who can become their strength, who can stand by them in their personal lives if there is a issue, not just in terms of collective money that is available for her, but also as a collective capital, which is ready to stand by her, which is also extremely important for young women. And having said that, there also has to be a question asked whether the young woman has agency on the money she's saving in that SHG. We have seen that classically happening, that a lot of money at times get saved through SHGs or withdrawn from SHGs on which the young woman has absolutely no say. फैमिली बताती है कि अच्छा आपके एसएचजी में इतना पैसा मिल सकता है, उठा लो, या तो फेडरेशन बन गई है, आपको इतना लोन मिल सकता है, 10 जनों को ले लो, एंड द husbands will buy a tractor and start using it, but they will not get any rent for that tractor. So how do you build agency of women in SHGs, saying that it's all right if collectively you want to buy a tractor, but even if your family members need it, start giving it out on rent, and how that rent can become a capital for your SHG. So there has to be a strategic work which happens around the collective power that the SHG women have, and how it can be used as an agency and a leveraging of the current situation. Then maybe it can definitely break through the stereotypes and are able to really help them. I hope I have answered your question, Pallaviji.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I think it's very important at this point to understand that yes, where SHGs are playing a prominent role in terms of empowering women, but we also need to understand which segment of women and how
Absolutely.
they're able to exercise their decisions and agency. So I think you've highlighted very important aspect of it, because being an academician and a supervisor, there are a couple of students under me who are working on this interdisciplinary project, and I am assisting with this project where they will be investigating the functioning of the role and functioning of the SHG. So one of the students had actually come up with this idea of, ma'am, मैं youth empowerment check करना चाहती हूँ. And today's session was so helpful because I was also new to this idea of, it never occurred to me. I was more focused on, how widows and, the marginalized women are there. And today's session, I think it was just the point I was actually looking for, and I think it is really helpful. I'll be able to guide them better. And yes, this is one area which I think needs to be explored and to be worked out more in terms of how the SHGs can be empowering. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Nikita has also asked a question. If I can share some indicators to gauge. Wow. So it cannot be universal, unfortunately. There are certain indicators which are there on the internet, which gauge leadership or agency of women or women's groups. So I will not give you pointers ABC, but I think what are the critical things which we need to remember while building or choosing these indicators is understanding the baseline. When I say that, we have to understand the group with whom we have started this work. And when I say that, I mean whether I'm working with a religious minority, whether I'm working with an ethnic minority, whether I'm working with a specially marginalized group like women who are rescued or who want to come out of sexual work, or women who are widows. So for them, maybe the indicators would be very, very different than when I talk about a women's group which is on a university campus and trying to achieve something for themselves. So it depends on, like, I'll give you an example. While working, again, I'll go back to Vacha, or even if I'm talking about my work in Ambuja, if I'm talking about a woman who got married and came back in a year and has become a part of SHG, and a woman who is married and is, a mother to two 20-year-old boys. So indicators for me for agency and leadership may not be the same in the beginning of my work for both. I will have to see the starting point where this particular woman or where this particular group is starting, and accordingly will have to build indicators of growth through the years as to where I want to see them. And it will not look the same for all sorts of groups from all sorts of regions and religions, or the marginalization backgrounds from where they come. And that is the beauty of working through gender and development approach, I guess, in your work, where you are extremely responsive and transformative. When you have indicators which are responsive and transformative, we look at all these aspects of work. That is why I said I'm not going too much into theory, but when it comes to indicators, are we even looking at indicators and looking at them and asking if they are just representative, sensitive, reformative, or transformative? And when we start looking at transformative, I think they are better in terms of gauging the leadership or agency of women and women's groups and the way they have achieved it. So somewhere we have to see what transformation that agency or the leadership has brought into the social norms or in their lived experiences. I think I cannot go more specific than this unless and until I know which is the group for which we are talking of agency and leadership. I hope that helps you, Nikita ji.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I'm actually on the road, so I've had to put my video off.
Yeah.
But I think what I was really hinting at is that how do you gauge potential? So if there are a group of, women or SAG groups, how do I know which will have the maximum potential? So I think, especially when it's economic involvement, economic participation, are there some factors that, can be a good tell? Because what you're saying is, I think, more from the, the theory of change or at the end of the project angle. I'm actually trying to see what can I keep as a startup project measure.
Best way is to start in a participative way. Involve the women themselves in chalking out, in doing the stakeholder analysis, putting the risk out there from their point of view, and learn from their lived experiences. Again, I would say learn from the similar work that has happened maybe in that area or similar backgrounds, and then understand the stakeholders, and maybe at times um, innovative ideas of working with the stakeholders who might be totally against you, and if they become your supporters, how things change. And I remember um, at a lot of times that has worked, because again I would take the liberty and say it's not one meter fits all kind of an approach. You really has to do a lot of deep dive, do a lot of maybe market research also, if it's an economic kind of intervention which you want to bring in, whether the women are ready to face the competition in market, and if their surroundings are ready to allow them to have that kind of time and energy to be put in. For any project like this to work, maybe at times we need to work with people in the background, people from their families, to ensure that women will be not facing the brunt of spending more time in a project like yours. So how do we do that is again a deep dive, for which we might need a different session of brainstorming. But more or less, I think these are some of the things that can help us get there.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yatma ji has written that she is now unmuted.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Shwetma ji's question. Ma'am, it was a small request. I think we're a little bit on a time crunch from Sangeeta ma'am's side. So if we can have her session right now, and all the remaining questions participants can ask towards the end of both ma'am's session as well. Since we have Medhavinee ma'am with us till the end of the program, I guess, ma'am.
Sure.
Yes, so we can take Shwetma ji, if it's fine with you, we can take the question later on.
Sure.
And I would like to invite Ms. Sangeeta Rege ji, who will enlighten us on the crucial topic of young women leaders and the imperative of women's health. Ma'am, if you're ready to start, I would like for you to take over from here.
Sure. Good evening, everyone, and what a delightful session by my friend and co-worker. You've laid the foundation for me, so I'm going to kind of stick to about 20-25 minutes, and then if there are any questions, it's always a happy platform to come back to IMPRI team and Vibhuti, who's also kind of guiding this team successfully. Before I start with my presentation, a couple of thoughts about leadership, I think, and this is purely experiential. I am sitting here with a managing trustee who is a woman, who is Dr. Vibhuti Patel, who has been one of the founding members of the organization I work for, called Center for Inquiry into Health and Allied Themes. And I feel like we're closing the loop from senior leadership at Sehat to she having seen me and many of my colleagues take baby steps to leadership. So really, it's like closing the loop and coming a full circle. Vibhuti, I'm sure that, you can recall us from 20 years ago and where we are now. So I just had to say that because the session today looks at leadership. And I also, I'm really extremely appreciative of the IMPRI team and the way they've built themselves in the last 3 years. A huge congratulations. I've been following your trajectory and your leadership as well as Arjun's. So please do convey my regards to him as well. I'm going to share my screen, and just in order to save bandwidth, I hope it's okay if I stop my video. So I am taking the route of looking at women in the health sector and where are they globally as well as in India as far as leadership is concerned. And this session really kind of compelled me to read a few more recent publications around what is it to be a woman in global health and in the leadership position. I did see this thing about the participants and where they come from, and it was a very interesting mix that there are a lot of middle to senior level academicians from universities, and then there are also students of political science and others. So it's a mixed batch. I didn't really find many people from the health sector, but I do hope that that these these slides or this discussion is also useful to those from the other sector. So while I was looking at the global and local evidence about how many women are there really in the leadership in the formal health sector, it is unfortunate that even globally, women are just about 25% in leadership roles. And when I say leadership, it means the executive director leadership roles. And though they dominate the care industry globally, this is where we are in 2023. These are the WHO evidence fact sheets that I'm quoting from. When you come to low and middle income countries, which are countries like ours in Bangladesh and Pakistan, Myanmar, and so on, you see an even reduction about how many women in an executive leadership position in the health sector. They are barely about 5%. So that's also telling, given all of our commitments to the sustainable development goals and really pushing for women in the health sector, pushing for leadership of women across diverse sectors, we've not really cut that through. Then I was looking at some data on contribution by women in the health sector. And unfortunately, that really does not go well with the representation of leadership. So if you see, it's 1.5 trillion US dollars annually is the contribution of women in the health sector, which is mostly on the lower rungs in terms of care work, which we all know is kind of found as subservient. But it's hugely laborious, and that's the amount of money that is being generated through this care work. Then some of you may be familiar with the NSSO, which is the National Social Survey Organization. And this was the report that I was able to get to, though I think the figures of 22 may be available as well. And interestingly over there, again, in leadership, we only saw about 25% of women who are within the health sector, public and private, who are doctors, occupied about 7%, I think, of leadership positions or less. 80% of women are in the nursing, midwifery, and auxiliary nursing positions. And this is a huge number because they're almost running your health sector. And despite this overrepresentation, there's a complete lack of their representation in any decision making as far as the formal health system is concerned. And this is quite telling because we all know that pre-COVID, post-COVID, there's been a huge upsurge of the demand for nursing. And yet, you have a huge number of people who are working in the nursing industry who have no say in their employment, in the social security, in possibly stabilizing of their incomes or roles and so on. And this is true for mostly the private sector, but also now increasingly the public sector, because you see that the public sector is now withdrawing and going into a position of public-private partnerships. So that's the other concern. I'm bringing to you a more recent study that was done in Kerala by, again, a group of academicians and researchers. And it was very interesting that they chose Kerala because we all know that Kerala has really good indicators as far as women's empowerment is concerned as per the NFHS 4 indicators. NFHS is a National Family Health Survey, which is done periodically. And there are 7 or 6 indicators on how they determine women's empowerment. Of course, as Medha explained, that they're not really the best way of clarifying empowerment, but mota moti, those are the kinds of aspects that have been considered. So Kerala has some of the best indicators on empowerment, where infant mortality is much lower, maternal mortality almost has ceased to exist, educational status is much better, so is the economic status of women. Women's participation in decision making is much better than the rest of the country. And so researchers plan to speak to women who were in leadership in the health sector. It's a qualitative study to really understand and document the challenges that they experienced as they moved up into the leadership sector. This study comprised of about 16 women, and it followed an in-depth interview kind of methodology. And interestingly, these 16 women hold different positions, right from being executive directors to deans to, holding an IAS kind of position in the ministry and so on. And the barriers were kind of exhaustive because many women said that they had to struggle to continue higher education. So the minute many of these women graduated, and they had kind of married and then they wanted to study ahead, whether it was the IAS exam or whether it was doing, completing your MBBS or doing an MD, there was a huge amount of resistance from the family. And so many of them indicated that they had to have a constant balancing role of ensuring their private responsibilities, which were domestic in nature, as well as excelling in their academics, so that people at the house would not complain about, they going out and kind of studying further and, kind of putting the family in a jeopardy. And all of these women are upper class, upper middle class kind of portfolio. For those women who were in leadership at that point in time, they disclosed that they had to choose what are called as non-clinical disciplines in the postgraduate degree for which is called as MD in medical sciences. And the reason being that if you, for example, teach subjects like anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, you have straight jobs, which is 9 to 4 or 9 to 5. The minute you veer into aspects like cardiology, ophthalmology, gynecology, surgery, you may have to keep long working hours. A lot of times, the marital family may not want that. And so these women had consciously made choices to then kind of focus on non-clinical disciplines for their specialization. People such as matrons in the nursing positions who have a significant amount of administrative autonomy and responsibilities suggested that night duties was a huge issue, and why could they not move up in the hierarchy was simply because they were straddled with aspects of childcare, responsibility for caring for the sick at home. And so taking on a higher position meant keeping long hours at work or in the hospital, and they couldn't afford to do that, so they had to voluntarily reject a higher position at certain point in their lives. In fact, some of the senior nursing cadre also disclosed that their maternity leaves, now you have 6 months maternity leave, when they were asked to come back in 3 months, citing a staff shortage. And, it's something about being women in the health sector where you can make these kinds of demands and requests. But if it is a man, I seldom think that such requests, which are completely illogical, unofficial, would be made on them. So this is just a snapshot of these 16 women and their experiences of women in leadership. Many of them are holding senior positions, and they said that since the time that they had taken on an executive director or a leadership role, they were often assigned tasks that were, probably lighter. The portfolios were lighter. For example, it could be something to do with hospital management, but no interface, for example, with the Ministry of Health, simply because they were not found to be fit enough, aggressive enough to take up that kind of a portfolio. The expectation from women in leadership in the health sector is always that they are more softer, they're malleable. If you kind of, work around them, they will sanction some medicine, they'll sanction some, therapeutic intervention and so on. So it's always easier to work around women who are in leadership, was the perception that these leaders disclosed. A lot of times, women were pushed to take transfers, even if they were in the senior leadership, to a location where their spouse resided, just because the health system and the hospital felt that the husband and the wife should actually be working out of the same city or the same village. And so despite you being in a leadership position, the seniors to whom you report are making these decisions on your behalf to actually transfer you. I think also a lot of gender stereotyping was reported by women leaders. There were a lot of jokes made about how women can't take strong decisions. There was a lot of ridiculing about their leadership style. They were not found to be firm enough, strong enough, aggressive enough. All of these are supposedly gender stereotypes, often relegated to men. And most of these respondents said that there was no leadership role, a role model for them that they could fall back on. So they had to do everything from a scratch. They had to learn everything from a scratch, and they had to learn and develop their own leadership models. Now, this data is from a state which is probably one of the most progressive in our country. All of these women are extremely educated and probably upper caste. I don't know. Those details are not there in the paper. But just imagine the plight of these women who have really strived and pushed and attempted to break the glass ceiling to get where they are. Now, there are so many other women from different states who may not have access to any of this. And how is it that we even can imagine then, younger women to be in leadership roles without adequate mentorship or without adequate role models? There is a similar study that a couple of years ago, almost 7 years ago, I and a colleague did in Bombay. And you all will know that Bombay is yet another place which is highly resourced, highly urban. And yet we were curious to understand, and this study was not about women in leadership, but we were trying to understand whether women health workers, comprising of both doctors, nurses, and support staff, face any violence in their homes or outside. And vicariously, information and evidence about challenges with leadership came out. And so I thought it is a useful study to quote here. Though we think that women doctors are on a pedestal and they are kind of respected and so on and so forth, women doctors disclosed a variety of abuse that they face, not just at the hands of, I would say, patients, but also at the hands of relatives and their own male colleagues. And the only way that they have continued to stay in the system is, that this entire thing of deflecting anything that comes to them. For those of you who may have ever worked with the health sector or know of friends who are women and who are doctors, you know that being a woman doctor in a hospital is a completely lonely business. Unlike the nurses, doctors have to work independently. They have to take their rounds independently. Their entire methodology of work, which is about diagnosis, intervention, surgical or non-surgical, is always done in isolation and alone. And so there is very little support that they can get or derive from anybody else. And so the only way women doctors have learned to survive these different forms of violence is by just keeping shut about it, because a lot of times it is about acquiring their postgraduate degrees. And, it's quite possible that, your final year of postgraduate degree is just going to be stuck if you make this complaint. And so you're going to just keep quiet about it. And once the degree is out, you may transfer and go to a new hospital, expecting that none of this will happen with you there. And then the same methodology of training continues when you receive junior doctors. And if some junior doctor actually discloses to a senior woman doctor, the attitude could be to say that, I dealt with it this way and I think you should also ignore it. And that when that kind of culture comes into the health system, nobody really wants to overtly disclose any violence that happens especially from male colleagues in the health system. And it's just about moving on and getting your work done, and that is how it is seen. And so it's extremely hard for then women doctors to move up in the hierarchy. And that's another challenge that we saw in a metropolitan city like Bombay with the municipal corporation. Interestingly, though, women in nursing themselves did face, a range of different kinds of, patterns of abuse from relatives, from even male doctors. The thing is that often nurses work in groups. And so there is a kind of support system. The nurses' unions are quite strong, at least in a city like Bombay, and there is scope for them to be able to disclose the kind of violence that they may have faced. And at least one could expect that there is a possibility that some kind of action could be taken or warning could be given. Now, just imagine, that there are women doctors who are kind of revered for their medical education and excellence, and come across as completely hapless because there is no support system. And then you have women in nursing who actually work in larger groups, work in pairs, and there is a sense of solidarity. And what I bring to you is one of the principles of feminist leadership. Feminist leadership is around expressing solidarity and offering each other the space to be able to come together and disclose what's happening and together look for ways of dealing with whatever it is that you're facing. And that be violence, that could be, abuse, that could be a demand for pay, that could be about ways of thinking, how do I move upwards in the hierarchy of this system, and so on. I did not read these out because the slides will be circulated, I'm sure, at some point in time. So I just thought I'll. So, of course, I mean, we looked at these examples as, problematic examples of what keeps women away from really pursuing leadership, or even kind of thinking or articulating that they would like to move higher up in the hierarchy. We do have some positive examples from across the world. And I think those examples really got highlighted during COVID times. We all know of, country, especially of New Zealand, where we had a woman prime minister in the seat, and she was just able to drive the entire COVID plan and management and triage and so on. But there are also a host of other countries, all high-income countries, right from Denmark to Iceland to Germany to Slovakia. And so there are examples of women leadership, though not necessarily, I would say, from the health system, but we could definitely take, a leaf from their management styles, from their leadership styles, and kind of emulate that in some way. So they have definitely been able to prove that, women can be as effective leaders as anybody else if given an opportunity. In India, also, we know that I think in 2022, if I'm not wrong, the self-help groups, across the country emerged as first responders for COVID, though that's not their primary role. But that was something that, really emerged organically, and their association with the ASHAs, who are the accredited health activists, kind of really helped in getting people in the community, whether urban or rural at large, to comply with COVID related requirements. And whether it was about creating an entire system of making masks at a bulk, or about setting up community kitchens, there is evidence to indicate how self-help groups rose to the occasion completely voluntarily and collaborated with ASHAs to do that. And looking at all of these aspects, it was the 75th World Health Assembly in 23 or 22 that awarded the ASHA workers in India the Global Health Award for outstanding contributions. And while that's brilliant and the WHO recognized their important role, the question for us is, despite we sitting in 2024, ASHAs are still rebelling. They are demanding for equal pay. They're demanding for basic social security. And where are we vis-a-vis all of the liabilities that the government has about fulfilling them for ASHA workers? And so, at one hand, you create a certain rural-urban leadership in women, and they take on this massive and humongous task of actually working towards health for all, and pushing for the health sector to kind of respond to different issues, their own needs, whether it's about their health insurance scheme, whether it's about their social security, whether it's about having a minimum pay. None of this actually exists, because many of you may know that the definition of ASHA itself is a volunteer, and she must be absorbed as a part and parcel of the health system and no more a volunteer. So that is where we are as far as the contradictions of these rewards or awards are concerned, and where they lie in reality. So I had a couple of these slides, and I thought I will pose a few questions to the audience here, because I could see that you're a mixed group. And, I don't know how you want to do it. You could unmute and answer each of these or any of these, and then we could have a discussion. Does this sound all right?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Yes, I think they can unmute. All of them can unmute one after another.
Vibhuti, just one question. I was wondering, or do you just want to have do you want to form just two groups and give them the questions and come back in 5 minutes? How would this work better? I will leave it to your wisdom.
Yeah, I think they will unmute and then answer the questions,
All
or
right,
they may
all
ask
right.
even their own questions.
Sure. Yeah, so the first, and it's in no particular order, but the first question is about, what according to you are the barriers for women to enter and progress in leadership roles? And this could be your own experience as a young or a middle-aged person in a certain office or a community or whatever. And we can have your responses on that.
So the participants can, if you want, you can type in the chat box. You can also raise your hand and you'll be given the permission to talk, and
Yeah,
you
raise
can
your hand.
unmute and ask. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I should check.
Shwetama Raji has raised hand. Shwetama ji, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Shall I join as a panelist or stay as attendee? The option is popping up.
It's fine. You can stay as an attendee. We can hear you.
Okay, sure. So the barriers for women to enter and progress in leadership roles, the latest example, and I mean not just the latest one, but which I have been experiencing since 2018, was the dominance of male at the managerial role. I mean, at my organization, there were a lot of males at the managerial position, and who, despite having a master's degree or a bachelor's degree and having required a number of work experience, they considered me and some of my colleagues as not so efficient and suitable to, climb up the leadership ladder.
Can you
Because we
introduce
all
the nature of work in your organization? What is the kind of organization is it?
Ma'am, currently I'm not working there, but I am preparing for the civil service examination right now. But when I was working there, so it was an oil and gas petroleum firm, where the task was I was working at the IT front, so it was kind of IT and field work. So as far as field work is considered, is taken into consideration, it's okay. Sometimes we did have restrictions, and certain level of expertise was required to land up to the field, to the oil rig shores, and going to the oil rickshaws like Bombay High or at the Tamil Nadu coast and these things. But when the IT support system was taken into account, that time also we were I mean, very severely discriminated just because of being women. And the unfortunate scene was our manager, where these grievances could be taken care of. She was also a woman, and she also used to support those bunch of male managers at that level.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll come back to some of these. Thank you, Shwetma.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else?
Swati Chandra ji has raised hand. Swati ji, if you can unmute.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what I think is, when one has to move up the ladder in any structure, I think these administrative leadership roles depend a lot on networking and who you know rather than merit. And in that, because of the responsibilities, because of the insecurities that are around, women are not able to do that. We see that, like, for example, I'm in the education system. Most of these, women principals who are there, they are someone's wives, or they are someone's daughter-in-law. So they are there because there is a backup. So even if they tumble down, if there is something, there is a support system to hold them. But for a woman who would want to like grow on the basis of her own leadership skills, and she will have to do a lot of networking, spend time outside. And for example, I'm a member of the staff council, And so there, most of the time these men will have their time together outside of the workplace as well, and they would decide among themselves, and then we would just be informed about what the decision was taken, because usually out of 10 people there would be only 2 women, and of that 2 or 3 women, also 2 women will be the ones who are not very willing to put in more work or put in more energy, and will even interest. So they also rely, okay, these men are there, they'll be doing. So then if there is just one woman, or it's just me who wants to take on active role, then it's automatically I'm clubbed together with the other women, that अच्छा आपको करने की जरूरत नहीं है ना, आपको बता देंगे, ऐसा हो जाएगा, आपको बिना बताए नहीं होगा. Just be assured that you will be taken, you will be a member of the party. But my decisions will be taken much mostly as a tokenism, that ठीक है, आप भी बता दीजिए, आप भी बोल दीजिए, but not so much, because they already assume that I may not be able to give as much input, or I will not be able to go with them. They have to go and then have to meet different people, because this is how it works, that you
Correct.
have to meet certain people. Someone has to be your teacher, someone has to be your mentor or guru, to pull you up in the structure. So therein, where even a woman has that potential and she's willing to put that extra work, extra hours, she's not able to move forward because of lack of networking. And if she goes out, and if she's not someone's wife, someone's daughter-in-law, then the first thing that comes under scrutiny is her character. That we uske कार में दिख गई थी, उसके साथ दिख गई थी, then she's
Yeah.
doing it because she's associated with someone in a wrongful way. So I think that becomes a greatest obstacle for a woman to go up in the structure.
Thank you so much, Swati. Yeah, all valid points.
We have other responses as well, ma'am. Meenakshi ji would like to go ahead, I guess.
Yeah, good evening, Professor, and good evening, Ms. Sangeeta. So we recently had a leadership panel discussion. So when we were discussing about the same topic, so we just found out another 2 M's, which can be added to the M's which was mentioned earlier. One is like menstruation, marriage, male partner, menopause, and money. So as and when the women comes to the stage where they have to take the leadership role, so there is another barrier, is one apart from the child care, is elderly care, where they will be they'll be expected to do this also along with the child care. And also the physical and emotional well-being is being taken for a toss because of all these menopausal reasons. So these are the aspects where we have to look from, why women don't opt for leadership roles due to physical and emotional barriers also.
Yeah.
So
Thank
this
you,
is,
Meenakshi ji.
yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
can take one last.
Sure, ma'am. Pallavi ji, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, so what I understand from this overall system and exposure to these ideas is that it is not just a particular barrier or a particular segment of women who are impacted by this, but it is the entire ecosystem that acts as a barrier. It's not just right from her birth to her engagement with the family, society, everything acts as a barrier. The way she is groomed to be morally binding, more responsible. So it is that entire, what do we say, the dual role that she
Yeah.
has to play at the family and workplace, the way she is expected to balance the work life balance, the way the infrastructure is not supporting, whether it is accessing to washrooms, hygienic washrooms, even during her period days, the way she has to forego the stereotypes, the way society operates around her, the way impressions are created around her abilities and inabilities, the way she has to be a part of all the cultural practices or religious practices that are followed at home, whether there's a fast, whether there is a puja that she's expected to be a part of. So, other than this, there are these physical constraints related to her pregnancy, related to her menstrual cycle. along with this, there are these moral pressures that, her child is getting ignored, um, how much time she's able to spend with her husband, with her in-laws, with her parents. So it is this entire ecosystem that one woman has to fight to reach up to that place of leadership. And once, if in case for the benefit, if she's able to fight it out, and if she's able to attain that place, she's able to challenge these barriers, then the additional pressure that comes is to retain herself and to manage and to disprove everyone's understanding about her being the leader. So the pressure, the barriers don't end there.
Yeah.
So this is this entire system where, a woman has to fight it out. And even once she does this, like we've seen how post the globalization phase, women have shown their you can say how they've stepped out of the home, started working in night hours, taken up positions in MNCs. They are coming up as strong leaders, but still, it has not been an easy path.
Absolutely.
So that is where I think the entire ecosystem is responsible, not just one. Across, this is like, the intersectionality being addressed altogether. Yeah, that's my understanding, holistic.
Thank you. Can we just move ahead, given the paucity of time? So thank you so much, Shwetma, Swati, Minakshi, Pallavi. I hope I didn't miss out on anybody else for your brilliant, comments and reflections. Because I think, as Pallavi spoke about, I think leadership is also about gender roles, no? So when you said the holistic piece around how is it that we raise boys and how is it that we raise girls, and that when women get into the workforce, the entire focus is on balancing both the family and the workplace. And the entire glorification of multitasking is something that we are all victim to. And it not just provides us a question on why don't women progress in leadership, but also why do women drop out of the workforce? Why is it that they cannot continue to be in workforce? Because a lot of things that you said, whether it is about having a mentor that looks out for you, who can really get you to, get you the confidence to even apply for a higher post, to, this entire thing of possessing or not possessing networking skills. And if I have those networking skills and I go all out to explain how I fit the position, the fear that my character will be assassinated. These are all extremely real situations in which many women across the globe, not just in India, we struggle. And I don't have any answers to these, right? Because I can only say that yeah, these exist, but we need to think of alternative leadership styles, ways in which we need to get women into the leadership position. So for me, when Shwetma said that women and men are equally competent to do managerial roles, whether it's an IT industry or a BPO, the fact that the possibility of then corrective action to say that X number of women must be there in leadership role, 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever it is, just like you have it for your Gram Panchayats and now you will have it for the Lok Sabha. This is something that needs to be pushed as a corrective action, as reservations, because by default, that's the only way to get women in leadership. Otherwise, women will continue to be in the workforce without ever being in leadership positions. And, that's something that, possibly we need to really push for and acquire and have a plan towards it. So thank you very much for all of your thoughts. I just have, one model here for explaining how should a feminist leadership look like. I'm hoping that we are all on the same page with the word feminist. Please don't misunderstand the word feminist as bra-burning women or anti-men or so on. Simply said, feminism is about believing in dismantling of power structures and, ensuring that both men, women trans, intersex, and all of the different people with disability and others get access to their rights. That is, in short, what feminism means. And that's something that has been globally now recognized. And so I have not purposely kind of kept away from the word feminism and, kind of soft-boarded it with women-centered analysis, because I do feel that the word feminism itself indicates the kind of politics that it brings with it. And so I've called it feminist analysis of leadership. And a couple of suggestions, that are here, and I have kind of looked at some materials. And if you look at my slides, every slide has a reference. And for those of you who are interested, please do read this as and when you get time. So to me, the first point is going back to what Shvetma said, is about dismantling leadership as with the masculine traits that exist about leaders are individuals, they're independent, they should not work with team, they should be looked at as inaccessible people, they are controlling and so on. I think all of these traits that are glorified as leadership need to be questioned. Leaders can be soft, leaders can be cooperative, there can be leadership teams, not just a single one-headed leadership. There need not be dominance. There can be a culture of cooperation that can be promoted. And feminist analysis brings all of these traits to its leadership style. And so the terminology of gender inclusive is something that has now increasingly become popular uh, in the parlance, especially the development sector, for achieving goals, where we need to look at not just women, but other people who are marginalized on account of sex and gender as becoming equal partners in achieving the goals that we all want to. The leadership style that feminist analysis pushes for is to be communicative and to believe that everyone in the team has something to contribute to, right? And that gives them an aspirational position for becoming eventually a leader. So what feminist leadership means is that people who are in leadership positions like the CEO, the ED, and others need to looking for ways to nurture young talent, ways to promote young talent, give them the scope, the platform to be able to present their work, right? So that is what communicative leadership indicates. To be purposeful is to engage in a learning process. Just because you become a CEO or executive director or whatever the position is, you cannot be the know all and do all. The development field, just like every other field, I think is evolving, is dynamic. And so this constant exercise of learning and relearning and unlearning is important. And also, how do you understand the power that you hold? The fact that I could be a director, but there could be a team that knows much more than I do about, for example, a style of researching something, a methodology for conducting a training. And am I reflexive enough to be able to understand, acknowledge, and learn from my coworkers and my juniors? That is one of the tenets of becoming a purposeful feminist leader. Then, of course, democratic and egalitarian styles, which are the central points for, I would say, feminist leadership, because it's all about participation, all about valuing and mutuality as human beings. And that is why you have both men and women in these styles of leaderships. And lastly, to say that feminist leaderships is not just about achieving an end. For example, achieving an end to lead a violence-free lives for women in India. The means matter, right? So if you have unethical means to achieve your end, the end itself is purposeless. And so the focus for feminist leadership is about how do you look at these means to be able to achieve the ends. And so ethics is one of the central points, again, to feminist leadership. And I think that, if and when you have the time, you could actually think of exploring what would feminist leadership in your institution, your organization, your school, your college look like if these were the tenets that one was to apply to leadership styles. And, many of us are still learning. There was a very interesting interview of Soumya Swaminathan, who you will know used to head the ICMR in India a few years ago. And now she holds a very senior position at the World Health Organization headquarters in Geneva. And her interview is just brilliant because she has expressed her vulnerability, her challenges in being the head of an ICMR. Because as you all can imagine, ICMR, which is the Indian Council for Medical Research, is hugely dominated by scientists who are men. And to be able to make space for yourself and for your word to be heard, and to be able to lead an organization of that stature, she says that we have very few women role models in the STEM. And I'm sure you're all aware of STEM, which is like technology, engineering, and all of that. So we need more and more women, I would say, in STEM, and not just workforce participation, but we need more and more women in leadership in STEM. And that's, I think, the next way for us to go. Yeah, so with that, I just end what I have to say, but I wanted a quick video to just kind of sum up what I thought is being said. If I have 2 minutes, I'll just show this video and just give me 1 minute. I'm just trying to see the video here. Just give me a minute. I don't know why I'm unable to share the video directly through YouTube. Give me 1 minute.
Open the video and do share screen.
Oh, yeah, that's what I did, Vibhuti. I've enabled the sound also.
Because here we are not seeing share screen.
Yeah, I am trying to share screen. I'm hoping that the sound should be okay.
Otherwise, just copy paste the link on chat box.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, now we can see it. Yes.
Hello, I'm Bettina Baldeschi, the CEO of the International Women's Development Agency. Right now, we're in the midst of urgent, powerful, and significant conversation about the rights of every woman to be safe. Together, we are saying enough to violence against women and girls, enough
Just give me
silencing women
one
and girls,
minute.
and enough to excuses and impunity. IWDA works
It
with
stopped, no,
incredible
Vibhuti?
women's rights
We
organizations.
can hear, but we can't see it.
At the front line of violence prevention and response. They are delivering
Technology, I think.
Yeah. Can you give us the name of video on YouTube? Yeah.
It's called The Feminist Future. Should I just put it here? I'll give
Yeah.
it one last shot, otherwise
Yeah.
I'm going to give
Yeah.
it up. Sorry.
Yeah. It's there.
It's visible?
Yes.
And it's the sound there?
Brave world.
Yeah.
This is a letter from your future. This is a world made equal. A generation challenged and changed and redeemed. A world you believed in. A world that you built. A world you're creating but cannot yet see. This is a letter from the women you've set free. Dear feminists, as you stand your ground side by side amidst the noise, as you hear the chorus of the movement and decide to lift your voice, as you fight together for the future, the right to peace and power and choice, governments will match your momentum. Policies will partner with your perspective. Communities will build upon your bravery. You are shattering the glass ceiling, feminists, and we know the shards stick and sting upon your knuckles, and the scars haven't faded, and the fire still feels hot. But you have revealed the endless sky to the generation who will finally touch it. These women have no limits now. The future is feminist, and so it is fluid and inclusive, where all expressions of gender are protected and respected, where the feminine and masculine are esteemed as equal qualities of leadership. The future is feminist, and so are its policymakers, where women in all their diversities are elevated and elected as leaders and advocates, combining their power to effect global change. The future is feminist, and so its governments are accountable to women, where they have recognized authority over their own bodies, access to safety and security, where their choices are upheld by their human rights. The future is feminist, and so it has reached inclusive peace, where the most vulnerable are not just granted refuge, but amplified power, a heard voice within every political negotiation, government resources for community elevation, funding and support to set free the next generation, where one woman's healing can heal the whole world. In this future, the war against women is finally over, and it benefits everyone. Feminists of every gender, this is the movement you are building together. As you demonstrate, as you motivate, as you organize and influence and advocate, this is the world you can collectively create. This is a letter from your future, from the women who are standing upon your shoulders, climbing beyond restriction into a true equality, taking hold of a world you cannot yet see. Brave feminists. This is a letter from the women now set free. Reach up and rise together. The future is feminist, and the future is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Inspiring utopia. Yeah.
Yeah, utopia
You
indeed.
know, they
Very important. We all need dreams.
National
Martin
Women's
Luther
Development
King said
Agency.
we have to
Right
have
now,
dreams
we're
that we can strive for.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that lovely presentation, and also towards the end, such an important message for all of us to have. If we, ma'am, do we have you with us in the session for the Q&A round?
Yeah, I can stay for about 5-7 minutes. I'm sorry, I've committed to something else, so I just need to log in over there. So I can stay for about 5-7 minutes. Is that okay?
It's
Sure, ma'am, sure. Participants, if regarding this session, if you have any questions, you can please unmute yourself. You can raise the hand. You can choose the write in the chat box or the Q&A box. Ma'am will be leaving us shortly, so please take up the opportunity if you want to ask. We'll give it, ma'am, a couple of minutes. If we do not get them
Sure.
in any, yes, we'll just proceed further. Okay. In the meanwhile, I would like to request our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji. Ma'am, what are your thoughts on this session?
Yeah, I think this is a very evocative presentation, and these are the issues which are not discussed, especially the inequality and the gender-based discrimination in the health sector. We have discussed gender-based discrimination in judiciary, in the administration, in governance structure, in politics, in the corporate world, and in the family. But the healthcare sector is always put on pedestal, and that's why Sangeeta's presentation is extremely important. It has brought in so many important issues. It's not only the harassment of women health workers, healthcare professionals, but also women themselves also have internalized casteist, communal, sexist, and misogynist ideas, because internalization of misogyny, it doesn't happen only with men. Even women have this kind of cruelty internalized, and that we saw in case of Patel Tadvi's case. Patel Tadvi, a young doctor from a tribal community, Muslim. She had multiple marginalities. She was a daughter of a single mother, and she was a tribal, she was Muslim, and she had studied under tremendous hardship. And when she enrolled for her postgraduate studies, it was 3 women doctors who continuously psychologically harassed her. She was humiliated. She was constantly made to feel that she's incompetent. And finally, she committed suicide. She also wrote a suicide note, and it became a very important campaign for the health activists. No, so I think we need to understand that unlearning casteism, unlearning communalism, unlearning sexism, unlearning misogyny also has to be part of the syllabus, because in medical syllabus, I think Sangeeta is also working on gender in medical education, that the kind of biases which the medical professionals also internalize, both men and women. And I think even the one testimony that came here, where you said that it was the woman boss who was discriminating against women colleagues. And we have seen similar things even in the judiciary. We have seen so many women judges giving the most inhuman judgments of POCSO cases. We saw in a 1 week, 4 judgments were given by a woman judge, in red-handed. All the evidences were there about extremely brutal sexual violence against teenage girls. And still the judgment came in favor of a boy, saying that he has a whole future in front of her. He's a young man. He's the only sole breadwinner of his family, without mentioning even a sentence or a word about what are the agonies of the girl. In one case, even the girl died, no, because he tried to abort using all sorts of horrible instruments instead of taking her to the doctor. So we have seen this, that women who make their space in the male leadership or in the leadership structures, which are, and I think about which also Sangeeta told us, that they also internalize the same methods of bullying or being insensitive to people who are perceived by them as powerless, no? So I think that we need to keep into consideration, and all of us have to continuously ask this question when you are in a position of power, as Sangeeta said, that how do you use your privilege to empower the people who are around you, who are uh, below you in the hierarchy, no? So all the horizontal and vertical inequalities, how do you deal with that? That is very important. Now, another issue is that of assertiveness training, because Sangeeta gave us a very good example of how nurses stay together. Now, it was during the 70s only, because of the nurses got unionized, and there were leaders like Mrinal Gore and Kamal Taid, who had a national stature. They also insisted that in the nursing education, there should be a module on assertiveness training, that nurses have to be like Florence Nightingale. They have to be kind, they should be polite, they have to listen to doctors, they have to listen to a health administration, they have to listen to patients. But when they are violated, how they have to fight for their rights, no? So there used to be, during 70s and 80s, there used to be several struggles of the nurses against sexual harassment by patients' relatives, sometimes by the colleagues. And after the Aruna Shanbag case, where Aruna Shanbag was a nursing student and she was brutally raped by by the sanitary staff because he found her too what you call over smart, no? Chatak Chandani. In Marathi, they call it Chatak Chandani. So she was a Chatak Chandani, over smart, teacher's pet, very proactive in doing everything. And to teach her a lesson, this man from Haryana, who was a sanitary staff, he raped her. After that, a new awareness about what was happening to the nurses came. There were studies also done on sexual harassment in the hospitals. And I think this whole movement, that momentum that we need to keep up, and the unionization of nurses, because nurses union has taken up so many cases, and similarly Asha workers and Anganwadi workers also, everything, whatever little they have got, that is only because they have stood together. So I think these are the learnings that we get from Sangeeta's lecture, and it was both the lectures were extremely important so far as the nuanced understanding of the leadership is concerned, because the management institution, the way leadership module is being taught is a very, very, very male module of, then it's a very impersonal also, because it starts with the premise that there is a cutthroatism, there is a mercenary instinct, there is a zero-sum relationship between two individuals. Either you overpower somebody or somebody will overpower you. So you are constantly strategizing in your mind, you are manipulating, maneuvering to see to it that the other person or people around you, you have one upmanship, or you demolish them. No, so that whole pyramidal thinking that you only one person can be at the top of the pyramid. That's what people are teaching in the leadership training. No, that if you want to come up, what your whole world is hostile to you. I have attended some of the leadership when I was forced by by my university being a director. I was sent to such program, and there the model is that of cutthroatism, while the feminist model, about which both Medhavinee and Sangeeta they spoke about, that is we think in circles. No, the circle, any newcomer has a can join the circle. Circle can expand, while pyramid you have to eliminate others to be at the top. No, so that is the major difference that you see in the leadership models by the feminists. So I think I find it both the both the lectures have given me major food for thought.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Since we still have Sangeeta ma'am with us, ma'am, any last tips or advice for our fellows, if you would like to share some?
Not really, my dear. I'm sure they're all very competent. I have only offered a lens to look at feminist leadership. And it could be, like I said, something that we can apply in any sector, not just the health sector. Yeah, I wish all of you the very best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. On behalf of everyone present here, I would like to express our deepest gratitude for this very invaluable discussion. And we hope we see you in our further events as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye, Vibhuti.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Regarding any of the sessions, we have our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji with us. We have Medhavinee ma'am with us as well. So regarding her session as well, anybody who got missed out during the Q&A of the first session, if you would like to ask right now, you can choose to do so. I believe Shwetama Rajji was missed out last time.
Yeah.
Shwetama ji, if you still would like to ask your question, you might. Yes, please go ahead. Shwetama ji,
Yes, am I
yes.
audible? Yes.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, so that time I was asking to ma'am that she was suggesting various ways and measures to combat I mean this illiteracy and spread education and information to the like how we can be aware about our rights and everything. So one thing on which we rely a lot is like education, getting girls educated at a good place and giving her proper be it primary or secondary education. But despite of that, if I see in a lot of families what happens, even if girls are going to school and they are being made aware about their rights and everything, and but when they come back to their home and when they talk about it, even if like let's say if after this session if I go and talk to my parents about this, that I learned this thing, so I think my mother would probably would be agreeing or understanding me more than the male counterparts in my family. I mean, the male are still as, stubborn and having orthodox, conservative kind of mindset, despite he is the one who is paying me for my education, for my this course, or for anything. So, how this thing can be tackled, or is it like, will it take a lot of generations to come to change this mindset, or is it, I don't know what. So, I find this thing.
Ma'am, you're on mute, ma'am, if you could unmute.
Medhavinee.
You have asked a question which generations have been asking. So there is no easy answer to this, unfortunately, but I can resonate with your pain and angst when you are raising this. As Sangeeta was mentioning, or even I was talking about, being able to actually have access and reach also comes with a lot of privilege of power of privilege, and especially for women, if we didn't go and deep dive into the socioeconomic intersections of women who have even made it to professional world and mid or senior level positions, which invariably are women from privilege, especially in the commercial sector, professionals in the commercial sector and not in social sector. If we look at the representation, it's mostly privileged women who have had generations of working women who had built the pathways for them. We have to all understand that unfortunately in India we have many Indias, and when Sangeeta was talking about feminist leadership or feminism, we also have to understand that in the same present we have women struggling with the issues that the first wave was fighting for, and the fourth wave or the new modern postmodern feminist neo-feminist are fighting for. So the bandwidth of issues with which we are struggling in our day-to-day life and at the macro level, at political and leadership level, are varied. So we have to understand that we are coming from that spectrum of women who are struggling to make our way. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. And having said that, I think the society is slowly becoming ready for working women, but they're not ready for women with careers.
Yeah.
And though it's not a very drastic difference between being a working woman and a career woman per se, when it comes to the practicalities of it, the kind of demands that it has on women and its acceptance in families, it's two different things. So somewhere I think we're still struggling to make those kind of normative changes and those kind of pathways for women to be accepted, to be in a career, to make something for themselves and not just get educated. But as I was saying in my presentation also, I think we all have to decide for ourselves and create those dialogues for ourselves with our families, and maybe through mentoring by senior women, by women in leadership, that can happen. We all have to be there for each other in whichever platforms it's possible. I mean, this is one of the platforms. So if I have to speak for myself, I have to slowly and steadily build those roads for myself with my family. It's not that I didn't struggle with being married in a family where I was the first daughter-in-law of the entire khandan. But then how do you negotiate? How do you navigate in each of the situation, at times becoming the bad one, but pointing it out, like a simple thing, like if there is I'm just giving you an example. It never happened to me, but these are the examples which I use when I speak to young women and men, saying that if it was a man and who didn't make it to his in-laws event, there will be applaud that he's so important at work, he doesn't get leave, he's really preoccupied. But if a woman doesn't show up, it will be talked about differently, and there has to be a conversation around it, at least amongst your friends, amongst your family. And slowly and steadily we have to build the grounds. We'll have to all find those ways in which we create these grounds for ourselves. How do you build those kind of safe grounds in our work life, where we are talking with young women to help them navigate through their way through core workers, to gaining skills which are relevant for promotions, for ensuring they get noticed in meetings, and giving them chance to come up and acknowledge them for their contribution. So these are some of the ways in which I think we have to do our bit, each one of us, not just as women but also men who are sensitive towards women's leadership. And of course your mother will understand you better at times than father, but I've also seen examples, Shwetma, where the fathers have been extremely outgoing and supportive, and the mothers have been extra strict because she has the again burden of being a good mother and giving you and passing you all the values, and the fathers are at times liberal. So even that changes from family to family, and the kind of environment from which the families have come from. and that's why I said, each one of us need to have different indicators for success. Each one of us need to have those pathways carved for ourselves, one step at a time, one success at a time. Only then we'll be able to have that high jump, which is really, really a high jump for all of us as women, because it's never easy, for us. We have to have the obstacle hurdle for the relay which men easily run. So all of us need to acknowledge that, and a little be a little easy on ourselves as well. I think we are all too demanding of ourselves. We have to aim high, absolutely, but we have to conquer with a smile on our face and a fire in our belly, and determination to fight against all the odds. Only then we make our battles success.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any of the other participants, if you would like to ask, you may. We'll give it a couple of minutes, see if we get any more questions. Now you can raise your hands if you want. I think, ma'am, we can proceed further in the session. Yes, Medhavinee, ma'am, if there are any parting comments you would like to leave us with.
It was a pleasure to be on this platform, and thank you, IMPRI team, as well as Vibhuti Ben, for this opportunity. And I think what you have been doing over the years, I had attended one of the courses myself, and also attended yesterday's budget session. And these are really so insightful and inspiring, because while working in the gender sector day in and day out, you need this kind of inspirations constantly to help you be on the path. So thank you, the team, for doing what you are doing painstakingly. And also congratulations for all the participants to take interest in this and joining the cause of ensuring that women are in leadership and young women are thriving and growing in this world where we need more and more exciting young people in leadership position. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Vibhuti, ma'am, if you would like to leave us with some parting comments.
Yeah, I think my concluding comment would be that today's both sessions have given us a lot of tonic to go ahead. It's very, very inspirational. Both the talks were extremely inspirational, with so many examples of varied fields of work, right from adolescent girls' challenges and how they overcome it, to the day-to-day existential struggles that we all have in our life worlds. And I think it touched the women from all the participants who have a very different trajectory. But I would just like to end with the verses by Mariana Williams, which Dr. Nelson Mandela often used to quote. Our greatest fear, because that's what we see, that anytime you talk about leadership, I've been training the women who aspire to be in politics and contest election, as a SP Jain Institute runs this course, and all political parties field their potential candidates for the training in governance. But major thing that I find is a fear. So I think these verses are extremely important for us. Our greatest fear, by Mariana Williams. Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be so brilliant? You are playing small, doesn't save the world. You're playing small, doesn't save the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking, so that other people will not feel insecure around you. We are born to manifest the glory within us. It is not in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people the permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates us. And here also, Nelson Mandela doesn't talk about the individual leadership, he talks about the collective leadership. That's how they could get rid of apartheid regime, which was so brutal, based on the foundation of a sectarian ideology of racism, and how African National Congress and history, and he was languishing in prison for 37 years. And he says this is what kept him going. So I think we all need to remember one thing, there is a strength, both the presentation brought out, there is a strength in number. We need to be collectively working so that we don't get witch hunted. It is very easy to silence you when you are isolated. No? So all the predators, all the tormentors know that if you are totally helpless, there is nobody with you, then they can overpower you. But so it is important to build our own network. I know the one participant said that it is so difficult for women to build network, but still at our level, I think horizontal networks are extremely important, because there is, as Latin American feminists have said, that women united will never be defeated. So we need to have our own strength, and this collective strength is going to enhance and expand the circles of solidarity, because solidarity is a mantra which both Medhavinee and Sangeeta talked about. The solidarity is the one which takes in, because it is not paternalism. It is not some messiah or leader coming to protect you or uplift you, because that word is also not acceptable, which was used in the 19th century social reform movement. We are fighting for our own rights, and that we can succeed when we are together, we share and care, and we learn from each other's best practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Before we move on to the formal vote of thanks, since this fellowship towards the end is also about an abstract submission from the participants, there's a small update regarding that. We had asked previously, we had asked the participants to kindly share their concept notes that we can discuss with the chair. So far, we have received 14 to 15 responses. Most of them have been replied to by our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel.
Today, some 5-6 more have come during the session. Now, I'll be replying to it.
Yes, ma'am, surely. So apart from the ones that have come today, others have already been replied and they've received the feedbacks. We'll be discussing on them in the next session, since we're short of time today. To all the other participants who have not discussed, who have not submitted their concept notes to us over the email learning@impri, kindly do so, since there will be, it's important at least for the topic discussions. Your topics can be finalized and we can further proceed with the presentations as well. So kindly do so. We have a good participation of around 47 to 50 participants, and we expect more and more participation in the abstract submissions as well. We had a hand raised, I think it's from Megha Kumari ji. Megha Kumari ji. Okay, could you unmute and ask if you want? Megha Kumari ji, are you able to unmute? I'll just check. Okay, you can unmute now. Megha ji, if you can't unmute, you can write, or otherwise we'll be proceeding further.
Yeah. So now the discussion on the project will be on
10th of February.
10th of February. Yes, yes. Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
And we really hope that most of the participants would have submitted their abstracts or their concept notes with us. So it would be a really fruitful discussion then only. Otherwise, we'll have to, proceed further with the ones who have already submitted. So kindly, please do submit your abstracts with us over the email. It is learning@impri. We'll put it in the chat box as well. With your permission, ma'am, can we move to the formal vote of thanks?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. So as we come to the end of day 5 of a Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online national winter school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship, I, Priyanka Negi, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. We are grateful to our experts for day 5, Ms. Medhavinee Namjoshi ji and Ms. Sangeeta Rege ji, for taking out their valuable time and giving us an opportunity to the participants to learn from this online certificate program. We thank our distinguished chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, for her guidance throughout the program. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and have actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for the sessions have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. We look forward to welcoming you on our 6th day of this certification course on 10th of February 2023 at 3 p.m. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading publications. We hope you continue to join us in future to the IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a very good evening. Thank you.